this up on the screen, this write-up from Haaretz of an analysis of stock trading before October 7th. Now, their headline here is, did Hamas make millions betting against Israeli shares before the October 7th massacre? Giant gambles against Israel in the markets in Tel Aviv and Wall Street days before Hamas's attack made billions. Somebody seems to have known about the plan in advance. Now, let me give you some of the details here. So first of all, they're sort of floating that obviously Hamas knew the attack was coming, so perhaps they were the ones that profited here. But we don't actually have any idea who it was that was placing these bets. We just know from these researchers' analysis that massive bets were placed against Israel, so short selling here, in the days before October 7th. And it was on a scale that, can't be explained effectively by, chance or the random fluctuations of the market. So let me read you a little bit of this, and you can see up on the screen how remarkable the amount of short selling on October 7th versus other times were here, which is pretty wild. And if you're confused, they have, this is in Israel and other countries, they do the dates in the reverse order. So 2/10 is actually 10/2 when we're thinking about it. Anyway.
It's the wrong order. Let's be clear. Anyway.
Moving forward. So they were short selling Israeli shares, betting they will fall in advance of October 7th, far exceeding the short selling during numerous other periods of crisis. This is according to a paper titled Trading on Terror. They were betting on this ETF that tracks Israeli shares in New York. So they're basically betting against Israeli shares without buying any, just to explain the concept of short selling for people who aren't, super into this kind of stuff. To explain how unusual the gamble against Israel was, they checked the volume of short transactions in this ETF from 2009 to 2023, so quite a long period of time, during which Israel experienced plenty of crises. There were 3,570 trading days during that period. The volume of shorts on October 2nd was in the top 99th percentile. The short ratio for EIS was also extraordinary on October 7th. It is extremely unlikely that the volume of short selling occurred by random chance. They also looked at other periods of crisis, including the recession following the 2008 financial crisis, the 2014 Israel-Gaza war, the COVID-19 pandemic, and nothing compared to the level of short selling that happened on October 7th and during other days in advance of October 7th. And they also note that this was during the Sukkot Jewish holiday. There was no expectation of anything crazy going on. So somebody knew something in advance and placed some really big bets here that paid off to the tune of billions. Who it was, we have no idea.
I have no idea. And we don't even know if it's a single individual. As you said, the Haaretz report speculated it could be Hamas. It could be a variety of actors. It could be people military intelligence officials, possibly, who had been trying to warn the government. Nobody was listening, and then maybe they leaked out the word there. It could be Iranian-backed actors. People like Iran and North Korea have done things like this in the past with regards to cryptocurrency and others. It could be, anything. It's basically the plot of Casino Royales, or at least part of it for those who have watched that Bond movie, which is why this is so intriguing. All of it traces back to this academic paper, which is pretty solid. I went and read through most of it. We can go ahead and put this up there on the screen. They're the ones who provided that chart to Haaretz. But if you go and you read through it, they say, we identify increases in short selling before the attack and at dozens of Israeli companies traded in Tel Aviv. One company alone, 4.43 million new shares sold short over September 14 to October 5, yielding profits of millions of dollars on additional short selling for one out of hundreds of securities that were traded on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. They also have some pretty interesting stuff here about the exact timing of the report and just how good the intel of the trader was. Previously, it had been reported from the Times of Israel, Hamas had initially planned the cross-border onslaught for the eve of Passover, but canceled the attack after Israel had raised the alert level. Military intelligence had caught the early signs of an attack on Passover. The year fell on April 5 and raised the alert. However, similar levels of trading were not seen within that. So whoever knew this knew not only to not trade short, ahead of Passover, they knew that the plans were ironclad, were set in stone, that it was almost 100% that was going to happen. And the evidence, is basically incontrovertible if you look at this statistically. One thing they also point out are some of the shortfalls in U.S. security law whenever you're actually trying to even get down to the bottom. I know that there's been a lot of speculation in the past about 9/11 and possible insider knowledge and all of that, but they talk about the so-called trading on terror phenomenon and how it has materialized in the past. But at the very least, if some of this or even any of this touch U.S. securities markets, they need to do a pretty big investigation here. Hopefully, our own securities regulators, just to name them. If it's Hamas, if it's Iran, if it's and some broken insider official or any of that, this is outrageous because it not only shows profiting from death. I believe there's also a billion subplot to something like this, which is just the purest type of evil. But it shows that somebody was so sure that this was going to happen, they were able to place bets that reaped them extraordinary profits, but with also some pretty extraordinary risk if it was a normal type of bet, Crystal.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's really important to emphasize that they must have had a very high level of confidence.
Bingo.
To place this type of bet because when you're shorting an ETF like this, your exposure is absolutely massive. Your potential for profit is huge, but your potential for catastrophic losses is also really huge. So there was certainly a level of confidence going into these trades manifested by their size and by the level of the exposure. Now, you make a great point, Sagar, which is there isn't really any law in the U.S., at least, against profiting off war, profiting off of terror attacks, which is disgusting, and we could talk about that another day. But there are laws that prohibit the finance of terrorism. So if it was, in fact, Hamas or Hamas-related or even Iranian-related, the way that we will know is if there is some sort of an investigation. Mm-hmm. If there's no investigation, then you can feel pretty confident that it was probably one of our friends rather than one of our foes. Or if we never hear about the investigation, you can probably be pretty confident it was one of our friends versus one of our